Let's talk coordinators. And I want to start with, I guess, what I'll deem the more controversial of Oregon's two coordinators, the one that there are fewer questions about. We talked about what's at stake for the head coaches in this game, but this is a real opportunity for Oregon defensive coordinator Tosh Lupoi to silence his critics, of which there are several. And I understand it at some level. But Oregon has been looking in this game, and this was a storyline with the Ducks I talked about coming into the season. They have failed to hold teams under 30 points in the biggest games of the year. And especially with how Penn State's offense has looked through the first three games, if that doesn't happen here, the calls for Oregon to change defensive coordinators, I bet will get even louder, especially if Oregon doesn't win the game. But he's going up against Andy Kotelnicki, who's one of the best offensive coordinators in the country. Full disclosure, his playbook is my favorite one to use in EA College Football 26. A lot of just wildly awesome concepts and plays in there. But I think the number one thing that I watch in that matchup of Penn State's OC against Oregon's DC, Kotelnicki against Lupoi, I look for how Oregon is able to better adapt to motion and tempo, because that's what Kotelnicki exposed in that Big Ten championship game. Ohio State used the same things. Oregon hadn't made those adjustments. We know how that went. But what Penn State did well, but they ran the ball, of course, exceptionally well, 297 yards on the ground. But just fundamentally, they used a lot of motion. They used a lot of shifts, which is a hallmark of the Kotelnicki offense. And they used some tempo as well. Oregon wasn't ready for it. That's the number one thing that Tosh Lupoi has to have ready. It has to be ready for defensively, or else Oregon's defense will be on its heels again.
Yeah, it's the change of pace more than it is the tempo itself. Because all of a sudden, Penn State will go from first to fifth gear. And that's what they were trying to do, and it just looked out of rhythm at times in these first few games. It looked clunky. So it's something that Penn State's definitely been working on, especially over the course of these 2 weeks to prepare for Oregon. So you get the extra week to, prepare for what Dan, the whole system's going to throw at you between Stein, between Lupoi. But you also get to work on your craft. You get to perfect some extra things. Tempo is going to be one of those things. It's where Penn State speeds up, but then they slow down. Then they speed up again. It's not just, we're going no huddle. We're going as quick as we can. It's a flip of the switch where after a couple plays, Penn State decides, we're going to keep your defensive players out there. I know there's different substitution rules and everything, and the refs allow you to wait and stuff, but it's still kind of that surprise. You got to make your adjustments quickly as possible. It's how you use the tempo, not the fact that you are using tempo, or else every team in college football that runs at a lightning fast pace would be really good, right? They'd be the best teams in college football. So it is how you use that tempo, and it's shown in the past, whether it's the Big Ten championship game, whether it's the Rose Bowl game, that it does work against Lupoi. I would imagine that he at least is more of aware of it right now and that it's not going to totally catch him off guard, but Penn State will be able to create some mismatches by doing that.
Yeah, the issue I did think was with tempo at times in maybe the Rose Bowl a bit more than the Big Ten championship game, but Oregon just in the Big Ten title game so many times looked like they were not fully ready at the snap, or they were trying to communicate with emotion, and they just weren't. They just weren't always as ready to go as they needed to be. I didn't feel like it was, some major tackling issue. Like Katron Allen and Nick Singleton broke, 3 tackles every single play. No, they just had a bunch of room to run, and if you give those guys a bunch of room, then they're going to beat you. They're going to beat you because they're really, really good backs. And we mentioned our crossover on Monday that Penn State's offensive identity has been kind of lacking so far. I think this is a chance because of how the Big Ten title game went. I think this is an opportunity for Kotelnicki to say, hey, maybe we should just lean on these 2 NFL running backs a little bit more. Wild concept. I know. Who could have foreseen? But he might watch that game tape back and go, boy, we were doing this run concept and they had no answer for it. And Oregon's personnel last year was probably a little better than what Oregon has personnel-wise on defense this year, though I still like this defensive group a lot.
And that's just it. It's that Kotelnicki, you say offensive identity, or Penn State maybe is unsure of what it is. The offensive identity is to run the rock, be a physical team. They will go 7 offensive linemen in this game. You will see 6, 7 offensive lineman formations. Is Oregon ready for that? Do they have additional players that can compete? Okay, so that's kind of the chess match within the chess match. A little bit of 4D chess here is when Penn State is going to go true power. Oh, it's worked against them, so they finally said, "Hey, let's do it ourselves." Michigan, Ohio State, they've done it against us to close out games and to even put themselves in a winning position. Why not put ourselves in that same path? Why not put ourselves on that same path to victory? It's going to work against, weaker teams, smaller teams, right, that don't have the same size on the depth, the interior of the defensive line, the linebacker room. That's not. I don't think Oregon has a size mismatch here with Penn State at all. But a team that is more inclined to be a speedy team, fly across the field and make electric plays. What happens when they do slow it down and they say, we're going to go a little methodical here. We're going to run those 6 offensive lineman sets, 7 offensive lineman sets, and factor in some tight ends as well.
Yeah.
That's when you mention Andy Kotelnicki and just how fun of a playbook it is. It's because he can go in so many different directions. 3 tight ends, 7 offensive linemen, 3 running backs. If they wanted to go 4 wide receivers, in theory they could. They're not going to, but it's so many different. They're going to run Wildcat. I would expect to see a Wildcat wrinkle with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen in the backfield at the same time, and then somebody's getting the football. Which one? You don't know.
Right. And when you brought up the 7 offensive lineman package, the reason my immediate answer was yes. The depth of Oregon's defensive line, I think, is better than any group on either side of the ball, quite frankly. Now, Oregon goes very deep at receiver as well, but the defensive line has been a point of emphasis in recruiting. They've retained almost all the talent that they've brought in. They're all former blue chip guys pretty much, and they all look the part, and they've rotated a lot of them this year. The first 2 guys on the field have typically been Amari Washington and Tioni Gray, but you've got Bear Alexander, one-time Penn State commit, question mark. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and Bear Alexander is someone you're going to see. Aiden Breland, someone you're going to see. Terrence Green is one of the largest human beings that will take the field for either team. Like, Oregon legitimately on the interior of the defensive line could go 6 or 7 deep, and I feel good about the production that you can get there. And at the edge positions as well, whether it's defensive end or that outside linebacker jack position, like I think they literally can go probably 5 deep, and I feel good about what you have there. Obviously, your starters are your best players, but I feel like the depth is definitely there. One more thing on Kotelnicki against Lupoi I want to throw out there. Dylan Thieneman, and at times Kingston Lopa, but mostly Thieneman, the Purdue transfer, they've used him in certain packages the way that Ohio State uses Caleb Downs. They've been doing this really interesting and new formation that Jim Knowles, now Penn State's defensive coordinator, did with Caleb Downs last year, where you take your nickel and you make him a deep safety. You have your other deep safety, and then you take this star player. He's not playing the star position necessarily. Dylan Thieneman is a free safety. You just basically put him in the middle of the field in between your safeties and your linebackers, and you make him a rover. And you just say, just go. Just be. I don't even know if he has specific assignments. I haven't asked Coach Lupoi about that, but like he basically stands in the middle of the field and just reads and reacts and does anything that he wants. We've seen that not all the time, but we have seen that from the Ducks so far consistently this season, and I wonder what that means for Penn State's willingness to run the ball, because it's kind of a 6.5 man box. Essentially, a 7-man box would be 4 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers. And when you go 2 deep safeties, you put a guy in between him and the linebackers, like, it's a 6.5 man box. I wonder if that is something Kotelnicki feels like he wants to go to the perimeter with, because guys are kind of condensed in the middle of the field, or if he looks at it and goes, yeah, let's just run the ball.
If it's a 5 defensive back formation versus 6 or 7 offensive linemen, he's going to run full force. That's kind of the idea here, is that you force Oregon, because an offensive lineman beats a defensive back every single time in a one-on-one situation, right? Or for the most part, I guess you can juke around them, but that's the idea. It's pretty hard. It's the idea is that the powerful, stronger player is going to win that block in a one-on-one. So you mentioned that about the Thieneman. Zachy Wheatley and Jim Knowles is doing that with Zachy Wheatley. So excited to talk about that same concept in the next segment too, from my point of view for the defensive side of things. But yeah, I like that strategy a ton. You just say to your best player, just kind of go, be free, be disruptive. And players like Thieneman, Wheatley, Downs, that kind of can just do it all. They can defend against the run. They can defend against the pass. They can be almost a QB spy, just kind of play center field and just kind of sit back and just watch the play develop. That takes a very intelligent football player to do it. So Oregon having that and being able to get that out of the transfer portal and just having them fit into the defense is, well, phenomenal for them.